President Cohen, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, sir. I'd hope that these questions have not been asked because I was in transportation. But the federal system is different than most of our states. How does the federal system work in saying that the percentage of people who return are is distinguished from those who flee?
How does it work as far as, are we doing well?
Numbers, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the numbers are incredible. I mean, we have 99% of people who are released on, this is 2018 numbers, 99% of people released on bond appear in court and do not flee. And interestingly, that rate holds true whether you're looking at the 5 federal districts in this country that have really low release rates, around 20%, or the 5 that have really high release rates, around 80%. So whether we're releasing a lot of people or whether we're releasing very few people, almost nobody's fleeing. And the numbers for danger, meaning reoffense, are pretty much identical at 98% not reoffending.
So the federal system has no bail bondsman, right?
That's correct, technically.
And the bail, what do you mean technically?
Technically, there's a part of the statute that says a financial condition is not supposed to result in the detention of the person. However, there is the allowance for some bail bonds. There's the allowance for money bail. There's the allowance for putting up a home as collateral for your release.
Yeah, but when I say bail bondsman, there's not a professional bail bond system. You put your money up with the court, do you not?
In some federal districts, there are professional bail bondsmen. Yes.
Are there?
Mostly they're not, but I have heard of some.
Well, they're often lobbying against any of these reforms. And I know when I was in the state legislature and the state senate, we had tried to get some change of system, and what they ended up doing was they passed a bond origination fee. That may be they do that every other places too, but it was like a basic $35. They said that the low-cost bonds, they couldn't do them at 10%, because I'm going to say $250 bond, it'd be $25 wasn't worth it. So they put on a $35 bond origination fee to make the smaller bonds more workable, efficient for the bail bondsman. Of course, that makes it $60 for the bond, and on a $250 bond, that would make it like 27% or something like that bond. But they put that $35 on every bond, even if it was a $10,000 bond. So it wasn't to make it effective and efficient and merchantable for the bondsman. It was just, turns out it's extra money they put in their pocket. And they lobbied against everything we had, whether it was citations in lieu of arrest in the field or citations in lieu of arrest at the issued in jail when you're arrested. They lobbied against it all, and they got it done. Are there any states that are models for reform?
On the money bail issue, I would defer to the people who are experts on the state money bail problem.
Mr. McElroy or Mr. Buskey?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's states that are being thoughtful. You know, oftentimes my state, Kentucky, is mentioned, but Kentucky is not a state that doesn't have cash bail. Kentucky is a state that is very dependent on algorithms, and as many people have mentioned, algorithms are only as good as the information that go in them. And I always think about it like this: on any given day, if narcotics wants to do investigations, they can either go to their university or they can go to a low-income community. And we know which one's politically correct. And so when you have absorbent policing and surveillance, you're going to have, out of those communities, higher algorithms that lead to higher risk assessments.
In terms of states, I would say that New Jersey is probably the state that is thinking the hardest and best and doing the best on these issues. As folks may know, New Jersey had very significant reforms about 2 years ago to its pretrial system that was largely based on money, huge bail bond industry, many of the same arguments against reform that we're hearing in the current debate. New Jersey today, according to reports from last year, has virtually eliminated cash bail. And so cash bail is only entered in, I think, less than 0.25% of cases, right? So hundreds out of tens of thousands of cases end up in cash bail. They've seen no change in the rates of rearrest prior to trial. Those still remain less than 1%. There was a slight decrease in court appearance from a very, very high 93% to a still very, very high 89 to 90% reappearance rate. But they also found that even with that slight decrease in appearance rates, that cases were still completing in the same amount of time. So despite all the rhetoric from the bail bond industry, even though people may have missed a court date, they were coming back. And finally, I would say they're doing all of this with astronomical release rates at over 95%. And much of that is due to the fact that New Jersey dramatically increased non-custodial arrests. So many of these folks who are getting out, and I think of upwards of about 30,000 people increased over last year, are never being booked into jail prior to their first court appearance. So I think all of those things are ones that we try to replicate. The one thing that I would point out about New Jersey that does require some caution is that they do use risk assessments to make these determinations. And that's the one thing I would think we want to go back and look through and really determine what role the assessments are playing in deciding detention and release in New Jersey.
Thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman's time has expired. This concludes today's hearing.